Ah, go fuck yourself. I mean, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't have been happy, but it's just the principle of the damn thing. It's not good enough. No way. I'll take it, dude. Garbage ticks, but wow, I cannot believe that run actually got it. I'm pretty sure I dropped almost 200 in ticks, if not that many, but I didn't think the second act was going to connect. I didn't think the third act was going to connect. I didn't think the solo act was going to connect, and I didn't think the fifth act was going to connect. And above all else, could have had a worse last act that cost me 243, so I will fucking take that to the bank, dude. Wow. I did not expect to find this kind of score on this. There's another one of those songs like Fall of Pangea where the tick bleed is so real. You can just see it in the chart, man. The sustains are literally fucking each other. Like, it's crazy. I don't know what they were thinking with this stuff, but this actually barely beats the nearly ideal score with all the squeezes and an extra 400, technically like 340 or whatever on the second act. But that's how crazy the tick bleed is, and how, like, you know, obviously it's not just tick bleed. Like, the nearly ideal expects you to like milk a lot of ticks from the third act on the blue. Like, yeah, good fucking luck with that, dude. And also, I'm sure the last act, there's like 150 ticks left on that, probably. Even though I thought I had decent enough whammy, you know, there's probably about 100 left. That last act was pretty decent, I think. All things considered, the sustains leading up to it, I'm pretty sure I dropped a ton because of nerves. I cannot believe that fifth act or the solo act came through. The solo act, I had a good front end, but the whammy on that first chord specifically was so bad because it's just that terrible sequence where you have to hit an early back end into an early whammy. And I know that sounds like complimentary, like, hey, you're already hitting a note ahead of time, but it just doesn't work like that, man. You just hit it too early. If you're me, you do. It is just like the Madhouse third act before the solo whammy, and God knows I still have nightmares from that. From how many fucking times I hit the first and third act of that song with world record pace ticks and just missed that solo act whammy. If you hear me bring up Madhouse a lot in these videos, there's a reason for it. It still keeps me up at night. However, 6 months, no, it's been almost 9 months later, that song still haunts me. But anyway, third act is really annoying. Obviously, anything following that second act is gonna suck. I tasked out the second act because I was curious about different activation spots. The main one I was gonna consider was activating on the yellow oranges beforehand. On the second yellow orange, I have experience with that kind of pattern and that pretty much its exact tempo from Monkey Wrench's first act. So I thought it might be worth checking out because of tempo math. I'm pretty sure it was just worse in both categories. Tempo math, because you spend more time under high tempo, and execution wise. And the TAS told that story as well. That ended up being a 1-frame activation, and the red-blue act, which is a better execution, ended up being a 2-frame window, which is about how it felt, to be honest. Funny enough, I started out, I didn't know what to expect from the song, really. Besides, it was going to be a tick nightmare. And within the first 10 minutes or so, I was like, I wonder if I can get that green in. Probably, looking at the tempo, blah, blah, blah. And I could, and that's how I was doing the second act for about 30 minutes to an hour-ish. Spent way too long doing that before I realized, what was theoretically possible here. And the main thing that got me thinking about that was, man, I am going to have superb ticks, at least for, either my standard or human execution standard, to get 243 on this path. So thankfully I was able to find a way around that, because there's just no fucking way I would have got 243 without the extra 200 on the second act. But yeah, all things considered, this is kind of just a perspective sort of deal, because normally, 2-frame window, extended hit window acts are not fun at all. They are very, very rough. But dude, after that Search and Destroy first act that I did yesterday, this is a dream. I mean, I'm gonna have to seriously reevaluate the squeezes that I thought were out of reach. But I do think it's worth adding on that a lot of these really, not referring to the paths, but really upper bound squeezes I've been going for have been at the beginning of songs, and that's going to be probably a consistent factor for anything else that I try to go for. When you get to especially 2-frame extended hit window acts, it really does come down to luck a lot of the time, because if you're consistently not missing front ends on these kind of acts, you're very likely not connecting the back end. That's just how it is. Trying to time perfect strum, wait 2 frames, activate, fret is just, I don't know, I just don't see that being consistent in any human execution. It's too many timings and too specific of a pattern to be overly consistent. And that's with strumming on the last possible frame, which is its own huge headache, especially when you deal with these frame rate strike line chart sync inconsistencies. I almost feel like I dealt with that on this second act, because there was a point where after I had ingrained the timing pretty well and I was hitting it a fair amount, I just went through this period of just not being able to get it at all, pretty much. And then I think I don't remember if I quit out because of the Hopo glitch or if I just wanted to have a fresh reset to test that, but after that reload, I'm pretty sure I got it first try and was back on not any sort of consistency, but back to I can actually get this. So I actually think I might have dealt with that in this run, which is the first time outside of like tick things like the Jordan second act that I feel like I may have been able to tell that came into play. Let's march on. Third act is really fucking annoying because in theory you should be able to use extended hit window on that front end chord, but because it's a sustain leading into those chords that doesn't involve one of the frets, you pretty much can't use extended hit window properly unless you're willing to drop a bunch of ticks on that blue, which clearly by the threshold that I have here in accordance to my goal probably would have cost me a lot. The tempo is high enough to where if you let off any of these sustains for a significant amount of time, like you would have to really benefit from extended hit window there, you would miss out on a lot of ticks. You know, obviously extended hit window works on chords, but if you're already holding down 2 frets, then it disables it. There's also a weird mechanic where if like a chord sustain follows another chord sustain, but they share a fret, extended hit window will work on that. But that's only been mildly tested by me, so that may not work in all circumstances. Something I learned through Guess Who? Madhouse. So yeah, third act really sucks following this second act. Those first 2 whammies, I have missed on those countless times, and the mini sustain whammies in the second phrase are just fucking awful also, especially if you're trying to hold ticks. Somehow I actually ended up with decent ticks out of those this run and having good enough whammy to connect it. Whereas usually, for some reason, I kept having 90 ticks out of those sustains. This run I had 22. But yeah, it was a very consistent, strange number that I was dropping. Solo act, that was really a matter of just getting that front end timing under control. I don't think that act is like hard at all, but the real problems are, you know, I already touched on earlier, that the whammies for it following that third act back end, and just being at that point in the song where you're, you know, potentially past the second and third acts, nerves really come into play there, so it's just really hard to get good whammy there anyway. But yeah, that act in a vacuum is not very difficult. Fifth act, not a lot to say either. It's pretty easy with decent extended hit window use. Like, you know, again, in this run, I was almost positive I was not going to connect it. Thankfully, I never had any kind of early back end miss, because the way I hit the back end is I just, you know, hold yellow and do a blue tap, and a lot of times when I do those hopo back ends like that, I miss the back end because, you know, I just try to abuse the anchor too early. But thankfully that didn't happen here. And sixth act, I was actually curious. I never dug too deep into this because I only tasked out the second act basically, but I was curious if activating on the red-blue chord actually would give you more points, which I know sounds crazy, but the amount that you could probably extend that front end on the chord as opposed to the orange, and how much triple chords at this tempo give you, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it was as worth, if not worth more, but it wasn't anything I was really willing to experiment with, especially after having actually practiced that front end. So yeah, really satisfied with this. You know, I expected to get at least 243.1, but I don't care, man. I hit all the squeezes. That's, you know, kind of been the goal and the pattern that I've been achieving on a lot of these songs that I'm pushing is, you know, ticks are just going to have to suffer. Nerves are too hard, and at the end of the day, if nobody else can hit the squeezes, then it's not really a matter of ticks, but I can always come back and et cetera, et cetera.